Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's three prakim in Rambam, which will be the final three prakim in the Hilchos Malva V'Loiva, chapters 25, 26, and 27. Beginning with Perek Chamisha Ve'esrim, the 25th chapter teaches us about the din of a arev, of a guarantor. As we will see, there are two times when a guarantor might step in. And there's also two types of guarantors. You have the Arev and the Arev Kablin, as we will see in this chapter. The chapter has 14 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph, says that Hamav is Chaveri. If someone lends money to his fellow. And again, we have to just point out that there are two times when a Arev can come onto the scene. If after the loan already happened, a third party steps in and volunteers by saying, Ani Arev, I will be the guarantor. In other words, he did not step in during the loan, meaning when the loan was given. He came later, whether he came on his own later, or whether the lender, Shatava Es Aloiva Badin, when the lender went to collect the money. And a third party who hears, Reuven is asking Shimon to pay back. So a third guy says, Hani Cheyu, take it easy, let him be, I'll be the guarantor. Or, the lender was an aggressive guy, or he was very upset at that moment, and he's hanging the borrower. And the guarantor says, well, stop hanging him. But on the Arev, in all of these cases, he doesn't have to pay anything. And this follows the general rule that has exceptions, that only with words, right, ba'amira ba'alma, a person is not mechayev himself. Furthermore, even if he makes this declaration at that later time by saying ani arev b'fnei bezdin, words. Well, a person ethically should fulfill his or her words. We know that, but legally you're not bound by it. However, but if when he made that commitment, he also made a kinyan, that the true arev means that upon him in any of the cases above, whether the kinyan was made bifnei bezdin, whether the kinyan was made beinoy lebein hamalva, yes, nishtabet, he now is obligated to be the guarantor. Okay. Now, halacha number 2. Another thing. Amaloi b'shas matan ma'ois. If the arev comes on the scene right prior to the money be given, in other words, the lender is about to loan money, or even more, he tells the lender, how they you lend the money and I will be the arev. In other words, if he came on the scene prior to the exchange of the monies between the lender and the borrower, now the arev is obligated to act as the guarantor, as we'll explain what that means in a moment, and you don't even need to have a kinyan. Wow. Now, there's two ways of learning pshat, but let's keep on reading. I'm going to go with the pshat because the lending of the money itself is the king, or the hana'ah that the arev gets by knowing that the money was only loaned because of his guarantee, that makes his commitment binding, and that's zechein im bezdin asa isa arev. This is even if after the loan was given. But if Bezdin initiated by reaching out to this guy, by telling him, listen, we need for you to be the guarantor, even though he committed himself after the money was loaned, but since it was initiated by the Bezdin, nishtabe, afapishol economy yadu. Going, for example, show you Bezdin reitzin lig b'sas haloiva, and he tells the Bezdin, hani cheu bani arav lachem, and the Bezdin says, well, if that's the case, then we'll let him be. Hoyel the yesh loy hana'ah. Sheheminu based in here, it's clearly by the case of the Bezdin, since the person has satisfaction, this audit, that because of Bezdin's trusting him, trusting his commitment, they're letting the borrower be. Okay. Now, halacha gimel. Whichever case, let's go to case number 2. So it's in the case when the audit now is bound. Okay, now the lender wants to collect. How does it work? Question is, to whom does the lender go to first? Does the lender have an option of going into the guarantor first? If a loan happened through an arev. This goes on case number 2. Notice the arev came on the scene prior to the loan. The loan was given because the arev was there. Like we explained, even without a kinyan, even then, nevertheless, the lender may not go to the guarantor first. Demanding payment must always go to the borrower. What's the arev that if the borrower defaults, then does he go to the arev and he gets payment from him? That after going to the loiva and the loiva says, I don't have, couldn't he get it from the arev? That's taka. That's when the truth is when the loiva taka has nothing. This is extremely important. In other words, a normal arev is only there when the loiva not only says he can't pay, when he indeed cannot pay. As long as there's a possibility for the loiva to pay, the arev doesn't have to pay anything. What happens if the loiva has money, but he's a strong man? He's not subservient to the rules of the Beis Din, and the ain Beis Din or the loiva b'chlal is not coming to the din title. In these cases, then he can get money. And in such a case, it's when you know that the borrower is someone who b'chlal is not going to listen to a Beis Din. He's refusing to pay you. It's futile. So, then you can go to the arev. Another detail: the arev, a guarantor, doesn't mean that the guarantor is going to be giving a gift. The guarantor guaranteed the malva. The arev always will go back to the loiva and tell the loiva, listen here, I covered you. I got the malva off your back. I'm your malva now. And and if not, that's the weakest thing you have. At least that you put the person in chedim, and he remains in chedim until he pays back to the owner. Now, we're leading up to the other type of arev yakir that we call a kablan. But prior we get to the kablan, which will be someone to whom the malva can go to first, before we use that word, what happens? The malva tells the loiva, tells the arev, you want me to lend money, you're going to be the guarantor? On the condition that I can collect from whoever I want. Now, this sounds like the malva is allowing himself, if he wants, to go to the arev first. It's not clear enough. Still, yet, in other words, it's not that statement is not articulate enough. What would be articulate enough? That if the malva says, I'm going to accept you as the guarantor on the condition that I get to pick from whom I will collect from first. Clearly. No, it's the malva is allowing himself, if the malva wants, to go to the arev first, then yeah. I mean, that's the tonight. Or if we're not going to use the word arev, we're going to use the word kaplan, which we'll explain in the next halacha. Just to know the word arev means bound, like eruvin. And I want you to know that b'chlal, the way arubos works, it's much more than the way it sounds like that I'm guaranteeing in English. I'm guaranteeing the money. No, arubos means that I'm connecting myself with the borrower. I become one with the borrower. But derech mamela, if I'm one with if the borrower owes money, I owe money. The arubos we learn from Yehuda. Ani arvenu. I'm bound with Binyamin. You're afraid Binyamin is not going to come back. If I'm coming back, Binyamin is coming back. We're one. It's the person. That's just what the words arev. Yet the halacha is that if the word arev is used halachically, you don't go to the arev first, unless you say clearly otherwise. Now the words kaplan, it comes from the word to be makabel, to accept. We're speaking in English. It's called an underwriter. The word kablan means exactly this. The word kablan means you come to me first. That's what kablan means. And that's going to be true even if the loiva has nachasim. Now let's go further. Now that we mentioned the word kablan, ezehu arav ezehu kablan. Oh my loy, ten loiva ani noisen locha. These are the words, give him a loan and I will give you, mamash beferish. No, it's forget about the word arev. I know in English it's all the guarantor. No. The Kabbalah is telling to the Malva, you lend him money and you come and I will give you. That's called the Kabbalah. Sheyesh la Malva lihipara mimenu tchila. Sheyesh, another thing, sheyesh doesn't mean that he has to go to the Kabbalah first. The Malva could go to the Kabbalah first. Don't forget, at the end of the day, who got the money? The lawyer. That's the meaning of 10 loy va'ani noisala. But if he uses other words, which is lend him, halveyu, and I am the aret, or I am the aret, halveyu, and I will pay. Even though these are words, halveyu va'ani chayav, I'll be obligated. Halveyu va'ani noisim, halveyu va'ani kablon. You understand? Not 10 loy va'ani noisim. Lend money. Even or 10 loy, listen to these words. It's amazing. I will act as a kablon. 10 loy va'ani kablon. 10 loy va'ani poireya. 10 loy va'ani chayev. 10 loy va'ani orei. All of these expressions is lashon arvanus. Hey, wow. What's the only lashon of a kablon is you don't use the word loan at all. That's the key. You're not using the word loan because when you lend money, it only makes sense that the guy who borrowed the money is chayiv to pay first. But if the words are give and I will give, that's the meaning of a kabbalah. And in all the other cases, lashon arbano saying the einoi toivay tchila v'leinifra mimenu mavachim sheish nechasim loiva. Unless, like we learned in Halach and Daled, even by the case of an Arev, if the Arev says, listen, I'll be, any Lashon shall Arvus, but on top of that, he says that the Malva says, okay, I'll listen to you, Arev, but I, Mimisha, Erza, Yipara, Tchila, and the Arev agreed, that's clear. Whoever I want to, I can collect to first, then he can go to this Arev / Kabbalah first. Okay, now let's go on to Allah Chavav. A Arev of a Ksuba. Now, the choiv of a ksuba, like we keep on mentioning, a woman is not bringing the money of the ksuba. We're not talking about the dowry. We're talking about the ikar ksuba. The ikar ksuba or the toisefes ksuba that she's not bringing in 200 zuz or 400 zuz. But there's a chiyuv on him that if he'll divorce her, he has to pay. On top of that, many times, if there is a man that's afraid to get married, he's not afraid of the marriage. He's afraid that if there'll be a divorce, he won't be able to afford the ksuba. If that's the fear. So someone says, if that's the case, I'll be the arev. That arvus is nothing. That arvus, even if it was an arev, like we learned in Halacha Beis, that he gave it prior to the marriage. Or, as we learned in Halacha Aleph, that he made a kinyan. Arev shel ksuba afal pisha kanam yadei pater melashalem. It's amazing, completely exempt. For two reasons. Number one, shahadei mitzvah asa. Mitzvah means that why did he step in? Because there's a mitzvah to get married. So he was trying to facilitate the mitzvah to happen. Number two, it's not like she loaned the husband money. That's not the ksuba. And if there's a divorce, she gets it back. Because then she taka needs it back. It's her money. She never gave money. So therefore, in his mind, he was never mishtabed himself. In Bachlal, there's a concept of an asmachta. You can argue any other is an asmachta. What's an asmachta? That if I make a commitment based on maybe means if the loiva won't pay, I'll pay, but maybe the loiva will pay. That we don't say, but we'll see later. Any other condition that's added nullifies the whole din of arvus because asmachta lekanya. And the same thing is over here. You want to get married? Who says you're going to get divorced? I'm helping you do a mitzvah. Anyway, she's not bringing in the money. All of these are rationales for which we say that the psychology of the arev was never to be fully nishtabed himself. But with one exception, that if the father is an arev, the ksuba of his son, then chayiv. Why? Because a father is taken mishabed himself for his son that way. The love the father has to his son, he meant it. Another din that any kabbalah of a ksuba, any kabbalah means not only the ksuba's benoi. That's the meaning of a kabbalah. Was when a person is committing himself on the level that you come to me first, or you could come to me first, then even for a ksuba, he meant it. Okay. Halacha zay. So it's gavaldik. We have two times when you become an arev and the two types of arvanus. Arvus, arev, or kabbalah. Halacha zay. Reuven shemachar sadol l'Shimon, uba Levi for whatever reason. The kibul achra yusa olav. In other words, when Reuven sells the land to Shimon, what's the vulnerability? That if Reuven owes money and that person comes to collect from Reuven and Reuven doesn't have, so he's going to be tighter from Shimon. When that happens, Shimon is going to go to Reuven and says, Reuven, I paid you money, give me my money back or give me land. Levi says, I'll be the arei for Reuven. The din is loinish tabed Levi. That's already called an asmachta. In other words, any commitment for the future that if, it's an if. Again, I know you can argue every arvus is if the borrower doesn't pay, but that's the arvus. That we accept, but not this. However, ve'im konu miyadai shuhu arev l'shalom demei mecher zeh b'chol leishit ve'enu Shimon, then chayev. Gavaldik. Here we say, yeah, if he made a kinyan, then he's taking a Shabbat himself. If he doesn't make a kinyan, even though we learned in halacha base that if you come on the scene, you arev, prior to the transaction of money, prior to the transaction, you don't need a kinyan. Here, Taka, we're going to say an asmachta. But if there was a kinyan, then it works. Halacha ches. On any type of condition, even though they made a kinyan, it's amazing. Because we always will say an asmachta, even with a kinyan. For example, you're going to amaloi tenloi, pani eten im yekach vekach, oy im lo yeh. The moment you add another tanai, you're relying that won't happen. He's not even chayav. We say loy gomar v'loy yikne kinyan shalom, even though a kinyan was made. Which is mamish awesome, because normally we say hanastaris l'shem alikenu, right? Dvarim shavalei ve'ena dvarim hamaisu hu ha'ikar. I know these are big exceptions. Halacha 9. Now, shnayim shalavu b'shtar echad. Okay, in other words, they are like partners. They borrowed together, guys, or they bought something together with one document. This is what we call partners. Or they bought one item. They were already partners. And the partnership, shalava echad mihem, even though only one of them borrowed, or one of them bought for the partnership. Of course, if me and you are partners, it doesn't mean I don't have a private life. But if me and you have a business together, and I purchase an item for the business, even though you're not there, it's for the partnership. Automatically, that's a klal. Partners in the business are responsible one for the other. Halacha yud. Now, shnayim sha'arvu echad. When two people commit to guarantee a loan, a debt that's taken by one person, this is very common in the gamachim here in the city, very maybe all over the world. They get two arevim, and not pshat two arevim half and half. They get two people to commit to the whole thing. So the din is that whenever he can go to the arev, whether he can go by a kabbalah straight, or normally he goes first to but the guy defaulted. The guy doesn't have nechasim. Now was the time to go to the arev. What the malva does not have to do, he doesn't have to take only 50% from each one. He can take the whole thing from one. He can't take a double. Cannot take a double, but he can and not, since there are two arevim, everyone is only mishtabed half. We say more, everyone was mishabed for all. Now the obviously, if one arev only had for part, of course there will be times that he'll get some from A, some from B. But if one of the arevim has all of the money, that arev cannot say, no, there's another arev, only take half from me. Even though one arev knew of another, even though they knew, every arev is an arev for all of it. And I want to add what we said the words before. If an arev would mean an arev to the loan, people can ask why. If there are two arevim, they each know that the guy borrowed $100, and I know there's another arev, so it's 50. An arev is not for the money, an arev is for the person. But derech memela, and the person borrowed $100, not for the money. Arev means I'm bound with you. If you're in a hole, I'm in the hole. He's in a hole for $100, I'm in the hole for $100. That's why it's for everything. Allah yadal. Now, in the other way, the echad she'arev shnayim, if one person guarantees chevra chayvus of two individuals, but these two individuals, they themselves borrowed from one. Okay? Now, it's two separate chayvus, two separate people. The Arev should let the Malva know. Two people borrowed from some lender, and I went ahead, two different loans, two different people. And I'm being an Arev for both. Now, what happens when the lender will collect? It has to be clear whose money am I paying. In other words, guys, don't forget, the Arev is not promising a gift. The Arev is saying that I will get the Malva off your back. But once he pays the Malva, the Arev goes to the Loiva. Now, to which Loiva will he go? If he was not clear for whom he paid, he'll never be able to get reimbursement. Obviously. Right. Okay. No. It's a chiddush.
What's the chiddush?
Maybe divide the money half and half. The Malva got money from one. The Malva also doesn't know from which one. The Malva got money from one. Maybe over here, he can tell both of the people, since the Malva got money from one of you, let's say he loaned 100 and 100, he can only now collect another 100. Each one of you give me 50. Can never do that. Each one will tell him, no, the Malva is still going to come to me for the 100. Even though the Malva cannot go to both, each one will claim, I'm still chayav. Halacha Yudbeis. That's the whole banking system that's collapsing. You understand? A guarantor to the guarantor. That's what we have Rabbi Jonathan and Ido Khan. That's what who's guaranteeing whom over here. So that's Hareza Kimisha Omar. It's mamish like saying how they bani arev. No, it's just like a person. However the rules work, are meshabed themselves, as we began this chapter, to the Malva, same thing goes to a guarantor. It's no difference. And within ha'arav v'mamalva kedin ha'arav rishon u'hasheni din, it's all going to be the same din. Which means, guys, again, begin this chapter. There are two times when they can step in. If they step in later without a kinyan yakir, it's nothing. Unless the Beis Din initiated it and ba'oisa hana. If they offered prior to the exchange of money, you don't even need a king. Also, if they use the words arev, then you can't go to them first. If they use the words kablan, you could go. All of the rules that we learned in this chapter goes not only directly, it goes to the arev of an arev, to the insurance of the insurance. Halacha Yud Gimel. Now, mishalei peidish ketzav adav she'arev. If a loan is taking place, but the Arev is saying, father does this. Whatever you do, I'll back you up. Or money. What you want to borrow money? Whatever you borrow, I'm going to be your Arev. Means when the Arev was Meschayev himself, he did not know the number. There's a machlokes when akotz alakotz. One side you can argue, that was his commitment. He's committed no matter. The Rambam holds it's nothing. If you don't know exactly for what, the number here, you're being Mechayev yourself, you're not chayiv at all. Let's go. Keep going. A guy tells a mother, whatever you'll give, my friend, or halveyo vani arev, or machar levani arev. So yesh when I go inim shohayrem, shafilu machar le baseres alafim. Or let's go completely nuts. Not 10,000, 100,000. But meguzma nishtabed harav makoyel. Because that is what he said. He says though, he told him kol mashetita. Says that Rambam, no, I disagree with that. Why? Therefore, and the dvarim shall come, hein elu lameven. If you disagree with it, then Rambam is telling you, you know why? This is kameven. Final halacha you tell it. How veyu?
So what did the man really meant when he said?
He meant. You see, no, it's he since he didn't know.
Within the normals.
No, even if the guy lent him $5, he's not mishtabed. It's over commitment deep down. Since you don't know what's going to be. You don't know that. You don't know what's going to be. You never really fully committed. In other words, the commitment of marriage is because you thought you know. When you discover you don't know, maybe marriage is different. There's a kinyan, there's a ksuba. You have to know what you're getting into. By marriage, no one knows. A lot of people know they don't know. This doesn't help. The Rambam says, even though the guy knows he doesn't know, by money, no, you're not an Arif. Halacha Yudal. Misha Amar Chaveroi Halveyu. Va'ani Arev Legufei Shaloi V'Hazeh. He uses those words. I will guarantee the borrower's physical person. What does he mean by that? So I know I keep on saying this is the Rebbe's word, that an Arvos is your ma'ara for the person. Here he means something else. I'm an order for the physical person means only that many times a lender is afraid to lend money. The borrower he knows can pay back because the borrower is a type of slippery guy. He'll disappear. It won't be to find him. So a guy says, I'm an order that when you'll need to find him, that's all he meant. Not that I'll pay. I'll make sure that I'll make him show up. I'll bring these words. Only what he meant was so whenever you want to collect, that's all these words mean, which is a big commitment, by the way. We'll see those commitments have implications. The implications is that what happens if this guy was unable to bring it? Then it'll be chayiv money. But that's second. We'll get to that in a moment. But all he meant was I'll bring it. Like we began in this chapter. The first out of this chapter, that when the loan was given, nothing was made. There was no out of there. But at some point, the lender began to collect, and this guy steps in and he says, "Hanicheyu, don't worry. Because now you need to make a king, and since you came after the loan was given." So the din is like this. First of all, step number one is all you meant was, I will bring him. But now I have a question. What happens if you did not meet your commitment? You did not fulfill your commitment. So the Rambam says, Im lo yavi zeh lo yiveh, yesh v'nago einim shohida, shu chayev l'shalem. Wow. They understand that's really what he meant. What he meant was, I'm going to guarantee that he's coming. Now, if he knew that, and if not, I'll be chayev to pay. Yesh mi shohida shafilu hisno alav amar. Im lo yavi enu oishemeis oishebarachan ei chayev l'shalem. Other people say, that not only does he not mean that he'll pay if he doesn't come, even if he says it, I'm guaranteeing him to come. And if he doesn't come, I'll pay. That's called a Tanai. That's already an Asmachta. And the Rambam holds that way. Wow. Because all you guaranteed was, that is what your commitment was for. That was binding, and everything else is not binding.
For those who woke up late, Rabbi.
Yes.
And I'm one of them. Can you please describe what asmachta is again?
The word asmachta means is that any commitment for the future that won't necessarily come to play. It's something that I'm saying that if something will happen, then I'll be chayiv. If something else will happen, I won't be chayiv.
So what's the difference between asmachta and tanai?
That's what a tanai is. Anytime you make a tanai on the future, if you make a transaction, al tanai, it means it might not happen. Now, 1 second. If I'm making a kinyan with you many times, we say the kinyan overdoes it. Like normally when you make a normal mechira, the mechira will only go into effect if something happens. It's not an asmachta because there was a transaction, there was a kinyan for the mechira. Here by the arev, you understand, the arev is not getting anything. The arev is not getting anything. That's why the Rambam holds that the arev is not getting a loan. He's only committing himself. So at least for the loan itself, it's clear. So the whole arvos is an asmachta because really, if the borrower is going to pay, you're not going to be chayiv. So either really,
I grew up understanding the word asmachta.
The word asmachta means you're being soymech. When you made the commitment, you're being soymech that it won't happen. It's like, let's go to gambling. It's called an asmachta. When a person puts the money on the red, why are they putting on the red? Because they want it to fall on the red. Even though they know that if it falls on the black, they're going to lose their money, they're being soymech, it's going to fall on the red. If not, they wouldn't put the money. So when it falls on the black, they never gave up the money. The late Shalom. Okay. Moving on to today's second chapter, Perek Shisha ve'Esrim is now going to speak about the payment that will happen through the Arev, how you collect from the Arev, etc. So it's Vaiter Dinei Arev. Perek Shisha ve'Esrim has 12 halachas, beginning with halach al. Rav Shmulik, if you can put yourself on mute, that will be helpful. Hamalve es chavere b'shtar. Give me just a second. I know how to do this. Here we go. Hope it worked. It worked. So now, after the loan was given, after the witnesses signed, that's what we began learning. The first case of the previous chapter. It comes and what did we learn? The Yakir, that if he comes after the loan was given, a kinyan is needed, and a kinyan was made. And therefore, now have a kasha. Is the Arev Shibud like a milva b'shtar, or is the Arev Shibud like a milva balpeh? In other words, when the malva is going to collect from the Arev, of course he can collect it from the Bnei Chayrin. Question is, are the nechasim of the Arev meshubad like the nechasim of a borrower when there was a documented loan that he can even collect from the meshubadim? So here we go. So even though the loan was bishtar, that's the point. If the loiva came later, it's not a arev bishtar. It's only like a milva balpeh, of course. Even though the loan was bishtar, because he came later. And more, that Rambam says. Even if the arev is written begufay shel shtar, but where he's not mentioned in the loan. That means that when the loan was, he's mentioned in the document only before the chasima. That means they wrote a shtar. They didn't write that the mal was lending money because there is an audit. They didn't write it. They wrote a normal shtar. Mal v'loiv. Before the chasima of the Edom, it says plenty audit. That's all. In other words, he's not ma'oirev im haloiva b'milva. He's not mixed in the text of the document when they speak about the loan. When the whole document was written, nothing was written of an audit.
You would imagine
it's documented. It's also not called documented. Don't forget one thing, that there has to be a justification. What did the purchaser do wrong? Like, why is he losing something? It's not his fault. The answer is because he should have done due diligence. He would have found out that the guy who sold him the land had something liened. There's not enough of a coil for the arev if the arev is written in such a way, even though he's written in the document. Avol how? But im kasav b'shtar ploini lava mi ploini kach v'kach. And right after they mentioned the loan, they mentioned begufay shel shtar uplani arev. That's that's called they're mixed together in the document.
That sounds like a shutfu.
No, that's called an arev. That's the arev. The kol lumiyadishal arev. Yes, even if need be, because it has to do with, is it nikar from the nusach hashtar? That's the key. But for it to have a coil, how does it have a coil? Because there's Adam, if it's unclear if it's written at the end. Came later, people won't mention it necessarily. If there's not enough of a coil, the lekeach can say, I never knew about it. Halacha Gimel. If this is Halacha Gimel, Halacha Beis, yeah, I know there's different machloikas. Mal v'shabalut v'ay, huh? Mal v'shabalut v'ay es aloy. When he's coming, take a like from the borrower. Any yachalut chaysev aloy malay. Leich eitz la kablin. Shahare yesh lachalit litbaya oisay tchila. Now this is very important. Even in the case where there's a kablin, and as we learned in the previous chapter, that however you make a kablin, penlay baniyat Allah, the malva yakir has the right to go to the kablin first. It doesn't mean that the malva is mechuyev to go to the kablin first. If the malva chooses to go to the loiva cannot say, no, go to him first. No. The malva says, I have the right to go to whoever I want, with one exception. What's the exception? It's interesting why the Rambam put it in this chapter. Because it's about collecting from the him. Because it's about collecting from the other. Imagine there's a lender and a borrower. Not only Yakid is this Arev saying, I'm a kablan. You know what he did? He took the money, the gashmias from the malva. He took it from the malva and he gave it to the hands of the loiva. That means the loan was given from the malva to the loiva, but he gave it through the kabbalah. That means the malva gave the money to the kabbalah. Here, if the malva goes to the loiva can say, I did not get money from you. You have to go to the kabbalah first. Ein la malva al haloiva klum. Halacha base. I'm sorry. So either, again, we're going back and forth. Just to know, some people had everything until the halacha aleph. I don't know how it is in the Chayin.
What you just said.
Wow. But you heard it now? Okay. Now let's go back. Now, as we mentioned in the previous chapter, only when the loiva has no lechasim can he go to the arev. Hold on, not so quick. The arev has at least 30 days. What did we learn yesterday? Well, I think it was Perik Chav Beis. When the whole say the Griyas HaChoid, you tell them Shalem, to demand payment. If the loiva says, I don't have money, the loiva says, the loiva is right away given 30 days. Can be the arev is worse. And the Rambam says, however, there's an exception. That if the malva, when he made the loan, was speaking about a loiva that was involved, or later with the kinyan, the malva says, listen, I'll accept you as a guarantor, but one thing, if the loiva defaults, when I come to you, I'm not waiting another whole 30 days. If that is what everyone accepted, then hakol lefiyah tonight. But without that, you can't make the chiyuv of the arev more than the chiyuv of the loiva. He's not even there. He can notify him, he cannot go to him. Today we have technology, it's different, but when they couldn't. And 1 second, if he has gedolim and it was a mulva b'shtar, it wouldn't be a problem. The problem is, and we have the rule, so then, it's another exception where even not by the kabbalah, you can go straight to the arev. Now, you don't know another detail. It's not just ein haloiva matzui. We have to know that the loiva doesn't have nechasim. So says the Kesef Mishnah and other. We have to know that he has no nechasim. So what's the point of waiting for the Yisoimim Ketanim to get older? Okay, halacha dalet. No matter how we're up to, this is halacha dalet. However you divided it until now. You have a dalet in the Chayenu? Good. He discovers that the loiva is poor. He cannot collect from the arev. Why are we afraid? I'll tell you what we're afraid. We're afraid that he's shouting the loiva, ich ben an ani, and he made a kanunya with the malva to divide that money. Simple. Halacha. All these takanas, like we had already in the beginning of this series, that after a certain point, after Chasimas HaTalmud, there were more and more deceptive people that are dishonest in money. So the Goinim needed to make new takanas.
Yeah, but if they already talk people are dishonest,
they won't.
Why are you making to swear?
From there you see. Well, let me say this way.
Anyway, it's not the time.
How many people? Not to be malamat choiva, but there are some types of people that when it comes to taking God's name in vain, when it comes to eating kosher, very machmer. When it comes to stealing money from other people, they read the Aseret Sadibros, loy, tignoiv. They put a car, I don't know, they know it's a reality. Someone who's nechshad on Geneva is not nechshad that he's going to make an oath in vain. That's the person to whom we're referring to. So such a person, if he's told, make an oath he's not going to make. Halacha. Or now, now don't forget, guys, what did we learn? By a milva al peh, the big difference is by a milva al peh, the loiva can always say, parati. Right? So the loiva is not here. So whatever the loiva can claim, the arev can claim. You have to bring a raya. And only then will I pay, which is gavaldik. Same thing. No, the arev is not worse than the loiva. He gave the money. Here's the word. Even though it was a milva alpeh, which means that what? That if the loiva yakid would have claimed parati, if the loiva would have claimed, which was a shekel, we know it's a shekel, then the mother will not be able to get the money. The mother lent money to a loiva milva alpeh. Okay. The Arif paid the money. Can the loiva tell the Arif, who asked you to pay? I would have said parati. And if I would have said parati, then nothing. The mother would not be able to do anything. I would only have to take a shvur. I would take a shvur assessors. That's not a taina. If Itaka did not pay and the Arif paid, he's chayiv. But there's some type of arvus guarantee, but only pay when I am required by a beis din or para chayiv. Then ain't haloiv chayiv l'sham leikum. Who asked you to pay? And you know something? In other words, there is a time where we say, no, the loiva maybe wouldn't have paid. Who asked you to mix in? Forget about an arev. I have a chaver. I know my chaver owes money. I want to do him a favor. I pay. Even if my chaver gave away a mashke. So I know that my chaver l'choyre will never get the mashke back without paying. Ein haloiva chayiv klum. If you did not ask me to step into your business and I paid your debt, you're not chayiv to pay me. And you get to take your mashke mechina. Once again, we know who he owed money. First of all, the loiva can claim, I had a relationship with him, he would have forgiven me. Maybe he would have forgiven me. A loiva has the right to say, in other words, if you were not asked to be an arev, not so simple for you to step in, to be the Gurus' savior. You know who's the savior.
But that's only if you pay off the loan. If you buy the loan, or you get the loan.
That's something else. Yeah, that's a whole different thing. Mesa loiva. Now, another case, the loiva dies. So here we have to take a step back. How do you know that the loiva b'chal didn't pay? So we already had these things above. If it's known to us to the beis din, how the Rambam doesn't write there, but then there are other cases where we do know. Keep going. The boy that he admitted to his children, Mamush on his deathbed, I still owe Reuven. Or b'chal, the guy Reuven was collecting, this guy was put into a chedem. He passed away in the chedem. If he would have paid it up, he would have notified the beis din. Oi, the other rule, based on the chazaka, ein adam perei chayve b'toich zmanoi, that he passed away before the due date. Oi shalei giz manam mevali gavis. So then the halacha is, guys, this is an audit. This is not a third party. Then, like we learned in halacha vav, if the audit paid the debt, the audit now goes and he's given from the yashim kol mashapara. But only in these cases. The point is only in these cases. No, we have to know that it wasn't paid. If we don't know that, why? Because Shema Aviyam Nasa Mozeha Arif Kol Hachoyv Shohaya Olav. Because you know what we say? We say that the father already gave the Arif the money. Why would the father give the money to the Arif? In other words, we're not saying the father paid the debt. The father owed the money. The father, prior to passing, already gave the Arif the money. By the Goyim, the meaning of an Arif in the times of the Rambam, and let's go back in the times of Chazal, is that the lender goes straight to the Arif. Makes sense that when a man is dying and he has a debt that he owes, and there's to a Goy, and since he knows the Goy is going to go to the Arif, makes sense that prior to his death, he already paid the Arif the money to pay to the Goy. So now the Arif is called double dipping. Beis din says, the father already paid you. And he didn't even notify the assignment. But that's something else. If he tells his kids, I owe money to a guy, when he comes to collect, we got to pay. If he says that, and the Arif paid, then they have to pay to the Arif. Halacha Zayin. Kol Arif sheyavelito mashupara. And the Arif is coming to get back what he laid out. Whether he's coming from the loiva himself. First of all, step number one is You have to bring a proof. You know what's not a proof? If I'm the borrower, that means that you have a shtat against me. When I pay, what do? I get the document. The Arevs just getting the document, miyad halmava, does not prove that he paid it. Why? The aim it's here shtar hachoyv she'ala biyad arav shema nafal ashtar miyad hamalva v'li parazeh klum.
You can say it by everyone.
No, of course you could, but very shkoya. But when the loiva has the document, all we're saying is we're saying that the malva cannot collect money because the loiva is claiming that I paid, and with this he's leaving everything the way it is. The loiva holding the document is not being moitzi mammon. He's just not allowing the malva to take money from it. Masha'enkein, if the Arev has the document, the Arev wants to get money from the loiva. To be moitzi mammon, that's not enough of a proof. He needs to have a receipt. Very good. What happens if there's a machlekes whether you are an Arev? We always go back. We always go back now a step. So you were my guarantor. I was never your guarantor. Or you asked me to be your Arev because we learned above that there's a big difference in din, Yakin, whether I was asked to be an Arev. Then when the Arev lays out the money, the loiva has to pay back. If I stepped in without being asked, we learned a general rule, you don't have to repay me. Because you can always claim, maybe you would have gotten mechila. You don't have to say anything. So there's a machlekes how he was an Arev. The borrower says, I never asked you to be an Arev. You did it, or you were never an Arev. Another type of machlekes. Notice he has a receipt. But the loiva is saying, who are you? I don't know you. I know, you paid the malva. I already paid you back. The loiva is telling the Arev, I already paid you back. The malva says, now that's a machlekes between the malva and the Arev. The rule, the prevailing rule will be and if there's no raya, the party that's denying has to make a shua sesses. Or if they're partially denying, they have to make a shua mixes. But the point will be is other than the shvuos, halacha 9, Eved. Shalavu. In other words, these are people that halachically don't own anything while they are in that state. So their shibud is chal. See, it's not like since they don't have the money, the shibud is not chal. Like we mentioned, it's a shibud to the person. After it'll be if the eved will be free, if the woman will get divorced, if the woman will become widowed. Let me add, if someone gives a gift to the woman, a married woman, but often that halachically she owns it, she's meshubed, then she has to pay. Even though she undertook it when she was unable to do so. You know what, I'll give you a good mashal. What happens if I'm your Arev? It happens a lot. I stopped doing it. There were loans here. They asked me to be the Arev. I don't have the money for those loans. So I would never be able to argue that when I became an Arev, I was unable to pay the $100,000 loan or the $50,000 loan. No, I'm a chuyev. Halacha Yud.
Rabbi, can you clarify how a married woman can get a gift?
We learned it not that long ago, Yakir. Especially you were having coffee while we were learning it. You have to know how it's worded. It has to be worded in a way where the gifter is saying it. It's almanas that your husband doesn't have any part of it. Halacha Yud. Katan shalava, another thing. If a katan borrowed money, he's chayev l'shalom k'sheyagdo. The only thing is ve'ein koisen al shtar. It automatically remains a milva al peh, even though there was a kinyan. She'ein kinyan miyara katan klum, but guys, he's chayev to pay. However, in contrast, katan shara v'sachedim, not alone, not he borrowed the money. He became a guarantor. Hoyru go'oinim she'ein chayev l'shalom klum, even when he becomes an adult. Someone relied on the cotton. Who asked you? שאין לקוטן דאס כדי לשבת עצמו בדבר שאין חייב בו. לא בערבונוס, לא בכל הגזם. And the Rambam says, the din emes so there's a big difference. So if the katan borrows the money, even though he's a minor, he's chayiv when he's an adult. It's gavaldik. If a katan undertook an obligation of money when he did not receive anything, he never was goymer das. He doesn't have das to be goymer das. And the final halacha in this chapter, halacha Yud Beis, if a woman borrowed money, documented, or she became a guarantor, documented. And what are we learning? That if it's documented, as we began in this chapter, that means, Yakir, that her belongings are now meshubet to her obligation. Then niseis, and she gets married, chayeves l'shalom acher sheniseis. No, it's even though in the marriage, her property is tachas yad ba'ala, but the nechasim were already liened. She only brought into the husband that which she owns. She doesn't own it already. Part of it is liened. Okay, but if the guy comes to collect, he'll collect it. But which means that if her property was not liened to her debt, and before she got married, now she got married. When she got married, she owned land. The land was never liened to the debt. Now the guy during the marriage is coming to collect. The woman says, "I have nothing." He cannot collect it. But if she gets divorced, because during the marriage, if it wasn't lien prior, even though these are properties that she will get back if there's going to be a divorce, during the marriage, the husband is like a purchaser that bought it from her. And any milva al peh, what's the din? You cannot be goiver from the lekuchais. But there's one difference. If she borrowed money prior to marriage, but she never used the money, she has that money. When she gets married, that money has to go back. It's huge. Even though you can argue when you lend money, you really give away that money because you never expect that money back. You want the equivalent amount back. Still, if that money is there, and don't forget, the malva is coming to collect, what's happening? She's saying, halachically, when I'm married, whatever I own, my husband did not borrow money from you. So here we say, and it's a maval peh. Here we say, no, if you have that money, give that money. Okay, today's final chapter, it's good with the timing because this is today's big chapter, the 27th chapter, which is the final chapter of the laws of lending and borrowing, is going to be about the proper way to formulate a document for the people that are lawyers. So they're going to have hana'ah and Jewish pride to know that all of the ways that documents are formulated today, if the Goyim would be smarter, they would learn more from the Yidden, even though Goyim cannot learn Torah, but there's so much wisdom in this Perek that they have no idea. The goal of this chapter is to make sure that documents are formulated in a way where it's much harder to forge them. No one is ever claiming that something is forgery proof. There's no such a thing. There's always, when there's Ganovim know the rules, they know how to circumvent the rules. But it doesn't mean that we have to make things easy. And this is the way that documents should be formulated, bo'ofen, that unless someone is a super ganef, he's going to have a much harder time in forging the document. So let's go. Halacha number one. First of all, I don't care about the language of a document, and I don't care about the characteristics. And these are two separate things. There's something called transliterated. What I mean to say is you can write a document, let's say in English. You can write a document using the aleph base, but in English. So I don't care. Shtar, that's written in any language. Or even if it's written, let's say, in Lashon HaKodesh, but you're using English characteristics, or vice versa. The language and the characteristics are not significant. What is going to be significant are the Torah rules of how you formulate a document. If it was written according to the regulations of Jewish documents, which will be described in this chapter, and the reason why we're going to have so many nuanced details in how you are to formulate a document is for the goal, for the sole purpose, for it not to be able to be forged. Again, we're not saying that it's impossible to forge it, but it's in order for people not to be able to forge it. And forging, the Rambam is breaking down forgeries into three madregas. Number one, a pure forgery. Number two, many times it's not going to be purely forged. But I'll give you a mashal. I'm writing a document, and I borrowed three, shalosh, and people who did not learn the Spedic, they wrote that word three at the end of a line, and all you need to do is to add a yud and a mem, and you have shloishim, which means it's written in a way where it's easy for you to add. Or vice versa. You wrote something in a way where it's easy for you now to make deficient, to remove. In other words, you didn't write it as Ketikun Shitrei Yisrael. I'm sorry, if it was written with these rules, was if the document Yakir was written as we will learn in this chapter, it can be written in English, it can be written in Lashon HaKodesh characteristics in English or vice versa, it's good. Another detail, if Edav Yisraelim, another detail, the Edom have to know how to read. That's something that we learned yesterday. If Edom don't know how to read, the only exception was the head of the Beis Din that had the document read by his main scribe. He can rely. If not for that, how do you know that before you sign, you have to read the document? We learned yesterday, they have to know both parties. Because if they don't know both parties, maybe someone is trying to hurt Reuven. So he's representing himself as Reuven. He's borrowing a lot of money. People are seeing that Reuven borrowed $1 million, and they're writing, he's giving someone else's name, identity theft, and that guy is going to be chayiv. That's why we need to have Jewish Eidim. Then it's written in Farsi. Who cares? It followed the rules. Hareza kosher, meaning not just kosher that we know that the loan took place. It's good enough of a document that's meshabed. It puts a lien on the properties of the borrower that even if the borrower later sells his properties, the holder of the shtar can collect it from the mishubadim. Aval, in contrast, kol hashtaris shechoismeim goyim, any document whose signatories are goyim, harei elu psulim, they are by default not good. But one second, what will be the exceptions? Chutz mishitrei mekach umemker, documents of selling and buying, documents of debt. These are two documents, first of all, that a document is only here as a proof. It's not creating like a marriage. It's not creating a marriage. It's not creating a divorce. It's not going to create a shibud. It's just going to document like alpeh. That yeah. But even there, that's only if the transaction happened in front of the two goyish witnesses. How do you know that it happened? Because they wrote that in the document. And also, when you see a person giving a bundle of money, that's not enough for the witnesses. You have to write that in front of us, so-and-so counted. Mana. Or they counted. We saw him count the money of the loan. And even then, it's only valid if it was done by Arkoi Shalahem, if it was done by non-Jewish, let's say, legal authorities. I'm saying legal authorities, however they set up their system. It was done legally. The Rambam writes another detail, and that is that there are, you have these places where these documents were formulated. Not every document has to be formulated today in a basin. Then it was formulated in a basin, or the Goyim had it formulated in. It could be that you went to the location, Yakir, of where documents are made, but you did it 3 hours when they opened up. There wasn't a judge there yet. Also not good. It's amazing. Number two. Another thing, even this is all on the second case of Allah Al. Now, when are we saying that chasimus of goyim are good? Lemeka chomemken, and for shitrei chayv, if you have later Eidei Yisrael that can testify that they know the goyim that signed, that they know the judge, the goyish judge, it means they know something. That they are known that they don't receive shoichat. Now, cheres means, cheres has some value. The Gemara uses always the expression, people needed bottle stoppers, corks. So use the paper as a cork. Okay, it's good, but that's it. That's all it's good for. Similarly, shitrei hoidoyo is documents of acknowledgements, and we're going to have a lot about this in Hilchos Toin V'Nitin. Just to make it clear, not every time that I acknowledge something will I be machayiv myself in it. Many times I can say I was just kidding with you, but there are times that if I make a declaration that I acknowledge that you loaned me money, that's an halachic acknowledgement. Now I owe you the money. If someone is documenting that, or document of a gift, Or let's say two people had a fight and they made a compromise, but you're documenting it. Or one person says, I forgive, I'm Michael. That if it was done with Goyish Edim, Afal Pi, Sheyesh Bahen, Kol Hadvarim Shemonino, Harehem Kecheres. That's very important. And this is the point. I want to tell you like this. These are the words. There's two types of documents. Okay, there's a document that's only recording a transaction. That is a sale document. The sale happened because money was exchanged. Or if someone loaned me money, that loan is the transaction. The document is only recording it. That is where, following the conditions we learned above, even though it's a Goyish document, it's good. Any document that's formalizing a matter, which is what happens when there's a pshara. You know, they say, what do they say? They say a binding arbitration, a non-binding arbitration. I'm saying what makes the arbitration binding was that it was documented. Then, so in other words, if this document is what's formalizing the matter, we don't accept Goyish documents. Yaron is smiling. We're not racist, guys. Psulim. I want to see what psulim means. So some people say that there are psulim, but the Rambam is not moida. The Rambam holds that a shtar choiv is valid, but it's valid only like a milva alpeh. I want to make that. It's valid only as a milva alpeh.
But this law is for outside of Eretz Israel, right? Not outside of Eretz Israel.
Independent.
No, but Dina de Malchuta. Say we have their law, the laws of the Medina.
I would say like this: that any document that's that's what we're saying, that's formulated, ketikun shitrei Yisrael. I'm not a Goyish lawyer. I think the Goyim have enough seichel to follow our laws. They got all this from us. There's thousands. We have thousands of years of wisdom. This is before these societies were born. Where for thousands of years God gave us a Torah. You think they reinvented the wheel? I'm sure every time they discovered something, the Torah says, the Goyim say, they don't get the godly part of it. They see the wisdom in it because it came from the Eibishter. In other words, why do we have all these rules we're going to learn? In order to make forgery difficult. Who wouldn't want that? I think that today they do all these rules. Now, another thing, when a document is going to be accepted, there's another issue now. A Jewish judge has to know what it says there. What happens if he doesn't know what it said, doesn't know the language? So here you say, have Goyim translate. They have to know dinim of witnesses. Goyim are not good witnesses. But what they are good for is you get two Goyim, each one reads it separately, and if it matches up, then you got yourself a document. And again, I want to make a point that the koyach that the document has is not to formalize, it's only to record. A loan document that's only recording doesn't have a din of a milva b'shtar. And that's why, like I mentioned, because there's no coil. And but why is there no coil? By Yidden. See, you can argue Yakir on this, that today, if they make a document, even by Goyim, there is a coil. That's something else. And then you can take from the Lokochis. I want to add what you're saying. This detail is different today because today they have a coil. How will I know if a house, when I buy a house, who am I going to? I'm not going to Jewish Bati Dinim here. I'm going to the Goyish system. And people are going to find out the history of this property and everything there is recorded. That's where the coil is. That's different. Okay, Allah this. Now, guys, very little limit is going to be what's not good. Most of this chapter will be how to do it. But let's just finish with the Shittei HaGoyim. Shtar she'edov goyim. Shemasorei haloi v'liyad ha'malveh. Oya moichel liyad ha'lekeach. In other words, the guy who's being machayev himself through the document, himself gave it to the other. Right? The loiva gave it to the borrower in front of Shnei Edi Yisrael. Here we say it's much better. And it doesn't have all of the rules that we learned before. Nevertheless, it's good. Well, you know why? Edom Mesida, because you gave it in front of two Yiddish witnesses. But again, Edom Mesida is only valid if the Edom know what it says there. And not only they know how to read the language, they actually read it before it was given over. And another detail, If, like, I give one example only. If the number is mentioned only on the end of lines, even if the number was mentioned a few times, every time the number is mentioned, it's mentioned at the end of the line. It's never going to be valid in a Jewish document. Which means then you can collect. Because Gavaldik, it doesn't have a coil. Ede Mesida don't make a coil. It's the document that makes a coil. Now, okay, we're speaking about ketikun. Ketikun, what is the tikkun halacha gimel here we begin? Tikkun shitrei Yisrael kachu. Kol ashtaris kulan. Rule number one, these are big rules. The last line of every Jewish document, I'm going to add one detail, Yaron, with the exception of a document that's only one line, which we're going to learn about in a moment. The last line must have in it a synopsis of everything that's written above. There will never be anything new in the last line. I'll tell you why by heart. Because the easiest place to add is that you have a document, witnesses sign, the party, let's say the lender, who is empowered by the document, can add in, and another $20,000 was loaned. But you can always add in the last line, you can squeeze in some more information, and there's witnesses signed on it. So to begin with, there's a klal that nothing in the last line will be new. What do you do in the last? You don't leave it empty. You make a recap. Why don't you learn from the last line? The Rambam explains. Because the witnesses, we're going to see, the witnesses may not sign too much lower. But even if they signed it close, but maybe there's room to squeeze in a line. The guy who's the holder of the document is the one who's empowered by the document. Like the lender has the document. Now, having said that, so you say you can't write anything new in the last line. But if the Adam signed 2 or 3 lines under, then you got the same problem. So that's not good also. Whenever the Adam signed 2 lines under, it's possible. Now, what does 2 lines mean? Another detail. You know Hebrew letters. So many letters are within the line. There's a heaven and there's an earth of where you put the letter. But let's say a lamed goes beyond the heaven. A line gachav goes in the earth. So 2 lines means that you should write a lamed and a chav one over the other. And that's the pshat. First of all, it has to do with the size of the Yedei Edom, not with the size of the Sefer. And another din, like we explained, lamed on top of a chav. Big lines. Very important, this guys, when you have a document and there's these shnei shitim more, the whole document is not valid. Because you made it's not filled in. You're not allowed to make a document that allows the possibility for people to forge. That already invalidates the document. If they did sign too far down, the guy decided, I have a solution. I don't want to have to write everything over again. Let me fill in these lines. What will I do? I'll have other people sign. The other people will be pasal Adam. Just to fill it in, just not to allow anyone adding information. You understand that? I want to add like this, because I don't know there's enough time. There's a minute here among some people that they make a ksuba party. These are not Truma people. This is halachically not okay. Like 2 weeks before the wedding, big ksuba signing party. Aside of the fact that you don't sign the ksuba at that time, the worst thing of this simcha is that they have everyone present sign in the ksuba. Problem with having everyone sign in the ksuba is that most people there are psulim la'edas, they're mechal shabbos, they're the father, there's the mother, you have all of the karevim, you have women. Does that invalidate the ksuba? I know once I needed to do it many years ago. I spoke to the local rabbanim, so I made 2 ksubas. I wrote on that fancy ksuba that they paid who knows $1,000 for. I wrote on it that I wrote in Hebrew, I forgot the nasa, this ksuba is only for show. It's not a valid ksuba, and it was not given in the chuppah. I wrote that on the document. And then everyone signed in it. Under the chuppah, I gave my kosher ksuba. But you should just know that the Rambam is basically saying that even if you have psulim signing on a document, if you have 2 kosher Adam, that's what happened here, and other people filled in that space with psulim, it's okay. The Rambam is right. It's not the end of the world, according to the Rambam. Having other people sign that are pasul edus.
Kasha overcome the passive.
Now, what is not a solution? A guy says they do this, and I know the goyim do it. I know I do it on a check. You make lines. That's not good. You know why? I'll tell you why. Maybe listen to these words. When you add anything to a document, you know something, you have to really notify that you made a shinoi. We're going to have this later. I know by the goyim lahavdil. Every time I make a shinoi, yakir, I have to put my initials. If you fill up a place filled with ink, it could be that there'll be a time that the Beis Din will ask for Adam to sign that this place was filled with ink. In other words, but that makes it bad because then we say maybe all the Adam signed is that this place is full with ink. That's all they're signing for. They're not signing on the Gufa Shemo Adam alasrita is chasmu, but like Gufa Shosha. Now, when we said in the beginning, right, that the last line is only a review. What happens if the whole document is one line? Then it's kosher. Why is it kosher? Because you can't forge anything. You understand? We have the Adam, Yakir, you have the content and the Adam on one line. Gebaldik. You have no place for it to add anything. But what happens if there's one line of the document? Yes.
Yeah.
And then the line underneath with Adam. That's possible. I'll tell you why. Maybe there was a one-line document and Adam signed. What did this guy do, the stinker? He erased the line before and he wrote a new line. And not erased. Erased, you'll notice. Maybe there was a line. See, the document is only possible if it's two lines. If it's only one line, we don't care. Why don't we care? Because we said before, because anyways, we don't learn anything new from the last line. But here, the whole shtar is on the line. So if I have a document, it's gavaldik, and there are Adam signed underneath it, a guy can cut that out. Nothing is erased there. And he writes a one new liner, and there's already Adam. Gavaldik. So in other words, you have a mixture. You have a line with two Adam, and you also have Adam underneath it. Yeah, I didn't even need it. It doesn't make it invalid. I know that. But if you have to authenticate the shtar, if the guy says it's mezuyif, you have to be mekayim. Never be mekayim from the Adam underneath because of this rule. If a shtar has one line and Adam are underneath it, that's not a good document. If the Adam on the same line are good, then you're good. Like we mentioned. But if you're Makayim, the two Adam on the same line, then you're good. Halacha. Kiyum Beis Din. Now, we're not learning yet all of the ways that they are Makayim. But whenever Beis Din does what they need to do to notarize, to authorize, to be Makayim Eshtad, where do they put it? They put it on the document. We're on the document. So let's go. Also, we're speaking about the physical formulation for people not to be able to get something notarized and then to use this notarization for another document. So kiyum Beis Din tzarich sheyia either samuch l'chsav yidei edem or samuch l'tzad hashtar or opposite keneged aksav on the place of the writing. Ve'im hoya ben kiyum b'hashtar. Even only one line. This is beautiful. When you have a document, my friends, don't forget, and in between the document and the edem, there's one line. We say it's good, but not by the kiyum. Puzzle. Why? Because Shema Yachtlev Ashtar Sheneskayim. What did we learn before? We learned before that if you write a document with the Adam on the same line, you're good. Now you got yourself a problem. If there's one line empty, a person can cut out the whole document. So now you have a kiyum and there's one empty line. On that empty line, you're going to forge a shtar with the two Adam. Shema Yachtlev Ashtar Sheneskayim. These I voice a sheet of shtar ushnei Adam. The nimtzakiyam al shtar kusud gavaldik. Halach zayim. On the other hand, if they not only were they not some, not only was there one line, there were many lines. But here you filled it up with srita, you scribbled it in. Here, caution. Now, what did we say before about Edom? Yakir, we say about Edom it's not kosher because we say that sometimes Edom are only signing that it's filled with sritois. Beis Din is never Mekayim sritois. That's Gaval.
So we're aware of the concept of initials back then, right?
Not,
Fatima,
yeah. So the Eni Yachal is Zayit. By Edom, we didn't say so. I know that. Beis Din is not Mekayim sritois. Edom do. Not Edom sign that it's filled in with ink. A kiyum is on authenticating the signatures of the people. Now comes another thing. What's my question? I want to know what happens if there's a document and some letters are erased or some letters are hung in between lines. When do we know that it's kosher? When do we say that? Maybe the guy added in later. If you see it's erased. Now, one thing was beautiful. I know technology changes things. Then when you have a piece of paper, whether it's paper or parchment, if it's erased, you can see that it was erased. If it's erased twice, so if it's erased and non-erased, you don't know how many times it was erased. But if the whole thing was erased once and some of it is erased twice, it also will not look alike. So based on that, we have all of them. Any part of a document that's erased. You have to write at the end of the star, you have to write about it. Today we put the initials on it. They did it in the bottom, and they says that letter or that word or that line, you should know was alamachak or it was taluya. In other words, you have to write in the document the parts, Yakir, that were hung in between the lines. Sometimes, like I wrote in the third line and the second letter, I wrote an extra dalid in between to happen to correct it. And you have to write the hakol time, and you have to write everything is kind. You have to understand that you're writing all this in the star before the Edom, not under the Edom. It's worth nothing, and you're following all the rules of the above. That means that it's gavaldik. That means that Edom, you can never write a document leaving too much space for you to be able to write it in later. The last line of the document is only going to be a review. So here you know that the Edom saw that. Which is what people write at the end of the document. Hakol shadav v'kayim. Afal pisha chazer v'kimay pasol. Don't forget, this is the problem. We do leave one line on the bottom. We write, now what do we write there? Hakol shadar v'kayim. So whenever there's a possibility that something was added, and you add it again, if it's erased, if that is erased, it's not going to be good. Halacha 9. Shtar shaboy shaba hu ve'edav alamachak. If the whole thing was erased, like we mentioned. Guys, if I have a document that you can all notice that it's erased, if one part would have been erased twice, what's the pshat? The pshat is that if it's all erased, maybe it was all erased. And after you got the Edom to sign, you erased the top part again, and you wrote a new document. You would notice that. Because erased twice with erased once doesn't look the same. Caution. No, we'll notice that. No, I want to say like this, guys. If the document is erased and the Edom are written al hanayard, that's a big problem. Because if this was never erased and this is erased, what is possible is that it was I can erase it again. I wouldn't know how many times it's erased if the contrast is with something that was never erased. Here in Halacha Tes, it's all the same. So if I erase one part twice and one part once, I will notice. Here, what's the kasha? Yeah, kid. 1 second. Maybe this part was already erased twice, and one of that was only erased once. And now we're saying that if it's all alike, and then the Edom sign on what was written, but I erased that. I added another 0. Now it all looks alike. Why aren't we worried about that? Because Edom would never sign on such a document to begin with. No. And now, because now it's Nimchal Pe'eram Kashem. That's not a fear. You know why? They would never assign it. Beautiful. And you know what happened in this case? If they would see that the bottom place was already double erased and the top was the only one, they would never sign it. Everything is on an erased piece of paper. But the hakiyum milamata is al haniyar. is on the part of the page that was never erased previously. Says the Rambam, Ein Mekaimen Oisoi Ve'ede Hakiyum Ela Ne'edem Shalamayla. That kiyum is nisht. Shema Hakiyum Hayarachuk Min Ashtar Habe, and V'Hoyarevach Mali Srita Shaldiyoy, and V'Chatak Guf Ashtar, and then Umachak Hasritois, and now V'Kosam Shtar Ve'edem Alamachak. Halach Yidal. Shtar Bahal and Yar. Now let's go when there is a contrast. The top part was never erased before. The Edem Alamachak, puzzle, you're kidding. Your mamish, that document is puzzle streif. Because you're giving the guy the koyach, right? If the Edem al machak, then they can erase it once and write whatever they want. What about the opposite? What happens? But if they write, but the hashtar is al anayar, they're writing that in there, then it's kosher. Now, where do you write that line? You have to write that line in between one witness and the other. Because if the Edom are going to write it under both witnesses, this guy can cut that out. Now with the opposite, the document is written al machak, was already erased once. The Edom written al niyar puzzle. Why didn't you say if they write it? It's also not good. This is what we keep on mentioning, that if this is niyar and this is erased once or twice or three times or four times, you won't notice. You'll only notice that one is al machak, one is al niyar. It's only if everything was erased once and then you erase only one part a second time, then there is a contrast. Here you won't know that. Then it would have been nikr, but not now. Another thing, says the Rambam. In all of the vavin, the letter vav, the letter zayin, shaloi yield the chukim ben atevis. Guys, a vav changes the whole meaning. A vav changes, and it's so easy to add a vav. It's so easy to add a zayin. Make sure that you look at the size of these letters. On the other hand, if the vav is too far away, don't forget there are many letters. Like every letter has a vav, like a hey. I can erase the left side of the hey and only remain with the vav. So look at the symmetry. That was a hey or was a ches. You only left the right leg, which is now a vav. But there's something forged over here. Because you can write a document we learned in the beginning in other languages. The word, the number 3, shalish, until the number, not the number, they don't write numerals, they're writing the names of the numbers. Esed, you can never write at the end of a line, like we mentioned this above, because it's easy to add shloishim or esrim. What happens if you're writing a document and it comes at the end of the line? Doesn't matter. All you need to do is you have to re-quote that number many times in the document. Vadai, one time it's going to be be'emtza shita. But you know what not? If you have a document that keeps on repeating the number, but every time it says shalish, it's at the end of the line, that's not good. What happens if there's a change of number? The rule is we say there was a chazara, and whenever there's a chazara, we follow the last. Why didn't they make a new document? Guys, not everyone there had a scribe, not everyone had paper. They wanted to chapara in this moment. They wanted the Sefer is leaving. They had no paper, but you follow. That's haloich acharatachton. That's a big cloud. Go after the last one, and that's going to be another big rule that koyach balashtar ala tachton, not over here. If you can translate, if you can touch one into the other, then you translate it in a way where the balashtar gets the least because he's the moitzi. But whenever it's a chazara, whenever it's for sure a change, you go after the last statement. Then if that would have been a way of translating it, and then always always when you know that there was a change, follow the final version. Now, forget about numbers. See, shem achar karavloi, still say haloich achar hatachten. In Cain, why did they even write the alien? He gives a reason over here. By a number, we say they're changed. Here, sometimes he gives an example. They wrote Hanani or Anani, and at the bottom they wrote Chanan or Yonan. In such a case, we know that it's Hanani. I'll tell you why, because it makes sense. Yakir. Even though today we have a Chanan with a line and nun, they didn't write it then that way. In other words, when do we interpret if it's shaykh? If the moment you have to say that there was two, then it's not. Then it's a change of name. Another day, guys, I want you to know Seifel is a Rashi Tevis, a Lashon HaKodesh, Sa'a and Peleg Sa'a. That's the meaning of Seifel, which means a saw and a half. The quantity of whatever. And there, then it says Kefel. Kefel is Kav and Peleg Kav. Kav is much less. There was a retraction. Whenever there's a retraction, we go after the latter one. So why didn't you say over here? Here we say maybe this move and it became a samech. Don't forget, there is a cloud that the yad balashtar ala tachtoinu. So in such a case, we don't want them to be able to collect more. No, it's normally we go after the tachten. Sometimes we can say maybe. If there's a maybe, then we give him the least power. Now,
if there is a suffix, it goes on the pachut. That's what we're learning?
Yes, even if it's a very stretch. What was the suffix? Maybe it's sheish meyos zuz vizuz. Or, guys, an istera, just to know, is a half a zuz. See, it doesn't say the word zuz. It says 600 and a zuz. Maybe it's sheish meyos istera vizuz. Even though, it's a stretch. But since it's possible, the lesser amount. It's half of the amount. Yikol sheish meyos istera vizuz. Sheyam shal atachtoina. I am Cain. You want to go to Yad? You want to go Yad Balashar Tachtoina? Why in Istera? Say it's 600 prutas and a zuz, even less. That no one wrote it that way because prutas. Once you hit 100 prutas, you go into the bigger nomination. You wouldn't write it. Lefisha prutas koinol oisav asefer zuzim, and then he writes them. Halacha tazay. Shtar shekasav by Istera. Ma'e, guys. Ma'e. Right, is that sixth of a zuz. You know what I don't know, Yakir? I don't know where the word mayor goes to. Does the mayor go to the ratio or does it go to the sefer? Ma'a, you wrote a number in the beginning. Ma'ai istera. It's not clear. So you go after the least one. Because of the rule, the Pnei I might say mechavere, but in might say the davar shein by safik. Elo the chem by safik. But tikach kol shtar sheyesh by mash b'shnei l'shoino is shamakach shamakach. Eino noitel ela pachash b'shneihem. But im tafas bel yoina. Ha. Emitzim yod the elo b'ray beru. Final Allah. If they wrote matbeya zov, but you didn't write what matbeya, we say dinar. If he writes zahav dinarim or dinarim zav plural, ein pachas b'shnei dinarim, but not more. If he writes Zahav bidinarim, you know what, Yakir? It doesn't even mean gold. It means 2 dinarim of silver, but to be paid in gold.